I just spent $465,000 in the last 30 days, and today I'm going to tell you all about it. Welcome to Everyday, a New Thought. I'm Thor Chalgren. In episodes 81 and 82 of the show, I described something I was about to embark on called the prosperity game. This is an imaginary game where you pretend to spend money over a period of time, in this case, 30 days. And the way that I played it was starting on that first day, I would spend $1,000 and then I would increase it each day. And really, the only rule was that you kind of had to try and spend the money each day. So what you're doing is you're raising your prosperity consciousness to think of yourself as being someone who has that amount of money. So if you do this for 30 days, you will end up having spent $465,000. I recently completed the game, and in today's episode and tomorrow, I'm going to tell you what I learned not only about the game, myself, insights I had, and whether or not I would continue playing this. So today, I want to share what I spent the money on, and also, more importantly, why I ended up making that choice. Then tomorrow, I'll share my insights overall on what I learned about playing the game and about myself. So the biggest category of expenditure that I ended up having of the $465,000 was I paid off the mortgage for the house. And I wasn't really sure in the beginning if I was going to do that. And I'll tell you kind of how it went for me. The first point where I had enough where I could make one mortgage payment in advance, I did that. So that was maybe like day 3 or 4. I just said, you know what? I'm going to pay the next month off. And then a couple days later, I was in a position where I had enough where I could pay 2 months. So now at this point, I'm starting to think about how I have bought freedom for us, for my wife and myself, by not having that expenditure 3 months down the road. Then I got to a point where I thought, well, wouldn't it be nice to have the mortgage paid off for the entire year, for all of 2023? So at that point, I had made that payment. So then that was exciting, because now what I was really starting to think about was, when you don't have that mortgage payment, you can think of your time as your own. You're not earning money to pay off the mortgage. You could start to think about, well, what do I really want to do with that time? Then I got to a point where somewhere maybe in the middle of the program, where I really started to accrue significant amounts of money that I just didn't know how to spend. And I'll share more about that insight tomorrow. But I got to a point where I thought, you know what? I could pay off the entire mortgage. And that got really exciting. So there was a point where I paid one huge lump sum and then a second huge lump sum. And that essentially meant that we no longer had a mortgage. Now, I will say that if I had this actual amount of money, I might have consulted with our accountant to say, is this the best plan? I mean, I still think it probably is. I like the idea of having that freedom from having to have a mortgage payment, but I'd ask for information and advice from a professional to make sure the tax liability isn't messing us up. So that was the first big thing I did. The second, probably biggest category was I had one vacation, and I'll tell you about this vacation. So on July 8th of this year, I'm going to Hawaii for 2.5 weeks, and I'm going to stay at a Ritz-Carlton, and I'm going to fly there first class. And I have all the things in mind of what this vacation is going to be. And what's fascinating is I picked actual dates. And at first I was only going to go for 2 weeks. And then I started thinking about it. And I thought, you know what? I want to have 2 actual full weekends there. So then I added on 4 days. But I really looked at, this is the room we would stay in. And I actually got a room that had a kitchen and stuff, because I thought, well, that's kind of, it wasn't like a complete vacation where I was going to lay around the pool. I was actually thinking about this as almost like a work retreat, going to an amazing destination and having an experience where during the day I could work on what I want to do in the future in the next year or two, but then also have this amazing destination where at 5 o'clock I could go down to the beach, or I could go for a ride around the island on the weekend. So I wanted it to feel real. So I actually picked out the exact room category we'd stay in. I also picked out the actual flights that we would be on. Again, didn't buy, but I looked at on Delta Airlines. I'm like, this is what that seat looks like. This is what first class looks like. I also then figured out, well, when we get there, we're going to spend money. So I actually figured out what's a per diem, like how much would I budget to spend per day on things like eating out or getting a massage or things like that. So that's probably the second biggest category. And I will say that if I were to do that, it would be the most expensive vacation I'd ever taken. And I didn't really have a lot of resistance around that. Like, that felt okay to me. And even though it would be the longest vacation I've ever had in my life, well, maybe in the last 15 years for sure, I felt okay with that. So in terms of stuff that I bought, I didn't really buy a ton of stuff. The first day I bought some clothing. I bought a new refrigerator early on when I had maybe like $3,000 or $4,000. I also gave some money to my daughter to help her get settled in New York. So that felt good. I gave some money to charity, also made contributions to my spiritual center. So overall, the two biggest things were paying off the mortgage and then a really nice vacation. So what are some things that I didn't buy? Well, I didn't go away every weekend. And that was kind of fascinating to me because at first I thought, well, I'd probably like go away every weekend. But I realized that part of the way I was playing this was I was still thinking of my life in reality, which is that I work at my spiritual center on Sunday. So it wasn't going to actually work for me to go away on the weekend. And my wife still has her job. So that wasn't practical. So I didn't splurge on stuff like that, which I thought I might have. I also chose not to buy anything on installment, even though I suppose technically I could have. So big thing, I imagined that I might buy a car at some point, and yet I didn't, because I kind of wasn't sure what kind of car I'd want, and I wasn't sure how much I wanted to spend. And though I could potentially have bought it on installment, I decided not to, even though the point of this game is that every day you have ever increasing amounts of money. So it wasn't that I thought, oh, I won't have money in the future to make the payments. It's just, it wasn't how I was wired. I suspect in the future I might buy a car, but for this first 30 days, I didn't. I only paid for things that I would pay for in cash. So I didn't take on any debt or any installments. So that's what I spent my money on in the first 30 days, how I spent $465,000. In tomorrow's episode, I'm going to share 3 insights from the overall experience and also share whether I would continue the exercise. And if so, would I start back at the beginning, or would I keep going with $30,000 and move upwards from there? That's the episode for today. If you like the show, please hit like if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening to the podcast, thank you so much. Please consider subscribing or following the show on your favorite podcast app. Until tomorrow, thanks for watching.